Order at 9 a.m. on Thursday, November 19th, 2020. I would ask everyone to bear with me because I'm obliged to read a rather lengthy opening statement. Good morning and welcome to the November 19th, 2020 Board of Assessors meeting. As Chair of the Board of Assessors, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the Governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the Governor's Emergency Order number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-4, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom through the city's IT department for this electronic meeting. All members of the Board of Assessors have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen into this meeting through dialing the following number, 929-205-6099. Once again, that number is 929-205-6099, and using the meeting ID number 822-4878-5345. And once again, the meeting ID number is 822-4878-5345. And the password number of 989839. Once again, the password is 989839. The public may also view this meeting on Comcast Channel 16. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting through public postings. Instructions have also been provided on the City of Nashua's website at nashua.newhampshire.gov and publicly posted at City Hall and the Nashua Public Library. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem accessing the meeting via phone to Channel 16, please call 603-821-2049. Once again, the number to call is 603-821-2049, and they will help you connect. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting via the methods mentioned above, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all the votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, the reason they're not able to attend the meeting in person, please state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. So at this point, I will pause and call the roll. Mr. Early.
Hello, this is Robert Early, member of the Board of Assessors. I am following the governor's guidelines and joining the meeting electronically from my home. No one else is in the room with me.
Mr. Bergeron.
This is Paul Bergeron, a member of the Board of Assessors. I'm following the governor's advisory and joining the meeting remotely from home. There's no one in the room with me.
And I'm Dan Hansberry, a member of the Board of Assessors. I'm joining the meeting remotely from home following the governor's advisory, and there is no one in the room with me. Please direct all testimony to this board and not to anyone in the audience. If you have questions, they are to be directed to the board, and we will do our best to get them answered. When directing testimony to this board, please announce your name clearly for the record. Ms. Brown, are there any changes to today's agenda?
There are no changes.
Does anyone have any questions before we begin? All right, seeing none. Is there a motion to waive the reading of the minutes of the Board of Assessors meeting, which was held on November 5th, 2020, accept them and place them on file?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Are there any errors or corrections?
No.
Seeing none, I will call the roll. Mr. Early?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
And Mr. Hansberry, yes, so the minutes are accepted as presented. Is there a motion to waive the reading of the minutes of the non-public session, which was held during the meeting of the Board of Assessors on November 5th, 2020, accept them and place them on file?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Are there any errors or corrections? Seeing none, I will call the roll. So all those in favor of accepting this as presented, Mr. Early?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry? Yes. At this time, I would like to recognize the Director of Administrative Services, Kimberly Kleiner. Director Kleiner.
Good morning. I'm going to share my screen so that members of the public can see this as well. Okay. So at your last meeting on November 5th, there was some comments given regarding a number of properties. The board was asked how there would be a response. While I don't want to make it practice for me to bring forward at each meeting response to these public comment, I did want to briefly speak about some of the alleged deficiencies noted at that meeting. So as you'll find in the minutes, it was noted 41 Brookline Street. There's no such property. There is a 14, so I'm assuming that that is the home that was spoken about, that sold for $450,000 in 2020. As we've stated, 2020 sales are currently being qualified by assessors. They'll be reported on the sales ratio study in December. So the resident claimed that this property had clearly been updated over the past year. So we focused looking at that. The building permits filed is a closed permit in 2016 and an open permit in 2020 for solar. The open permit has not been closed as of yet. We have to look for proof in any alleged upgrade. Was there a building permit pulled? Was there some type of indication to us that there were upgrades on a property? And clearly looking at this, although it's still going through sales review, the building permits do not speak to something of that sort. The same situation was for 28 Stephen Street. It's a 2020 sale, still in review. But that property had no permits. So we're not looking at that any further. Changes on property record cards are being noted. 14 Thorndike, we've discussed this property before. It has a 2013 building permit that was closed. One of the reasons for closing that permit is the age of the permit. Further work regarding that permit would require an updated permit. The owner has indicated that they do not intend to finish the project. The EYB on that property on the 2019 and 2020 card is 1995. It's still 1995. 6 Bates Drive had a permit dated 7 July of 2019. Was closed in September 2020. Notes are in the comment section on that property record card. The assessment went from 301 to 312.5. The EYB is 1979 with 27% depreciation. That has remained unchanged on the 2020 card. 12 Ritter Street, permit dated October 2018, was closed by an assessor in September of 2020. The EYB was changed on this property from 1959 to 1974. The home had upgrades, all noted on the property record card by the assessor. Went from poor to average condition. And it's noted on the card that the home was flipped, which was confirmed by the owner and by MLS. Again, this is all clearly noted on the property record card. We were notified by Treasurer Fredette that tax bills were mailed on November 12th. They actually went out late that evening. If residents have questions on their assessments, they may contact the department by phone or email. The abatement form and instructions for filing an abatement are posted to the city website on the assessing page. And you'll find it looks just like this here. It's the abatement form. The link here is a fillable form. However, we strongly encourage residents, if they click on the link and fill out the fillable form, to then print and sign the form and either mail it or hand deliver it. There is a city drop-off box in the entrance to City Hall on the Elm Street location that you may drop things in 24/7. It is secure, and it is emptied many times a day. So, we want residents to understand that it's a clear process. When the assessing department receives an abatement, when we receive any mail, we time and date stamp those documents. We do not normally return the time-stamped document to the resident. We'll review the abatements and assign them to an assessor who will contact the resident. Due to COVID-19 restrictions on interior inspections, we'll be asking the Board of Assessors to approve the process of using the residential abatement questionnaire, similar to what we did last June for the 19 abatements. But we want to look at that form. We'd like to consult with our expert, and we'll bring that to the Board of Assessors for the first meeting in December for your review. We've a little bit of bad news. We have been informed by the contractor, D.L. King, who was hired to do our City Hall renovations, that materials have been delayed. Most construction projects are faced with these long lead times and major shutdowns, especially in China. Therefore, it's projected that assessing and motor vehicles will not be physically returning to the office until late December, possibly January. We're working as hard as we can to change that. The assessing department is also working very hard with information technology to place the 2020 property record cards on our website. This is a process. We've upgraded our software. There's things that need to be run, things that need to be checked. In the meantime, if a resident needs a copy of their card, they may call or email the department. We'll make sure that we get that 2020 property record card to them. The last meeting, I informed you that our GIS department, specifically Pam Andruszkiewicz, has been working with CDM Smith on a new sales tool. This will allow the residents to enter an address, and they will get a listing of very detailed information on sales within a certain radius from that address. Final testing is complete. Ms. Andruszkiewicz is working very hard with CDM Smith and our IT department, and we should have it by the end of the month. And obviously, we know people are interested in this, so they're working very hard on that as soon as possible. And as I always do, attached to my update to the board is Vision's update on the full revaluation. They're about 57% complete, and this information is posted on our website. As we always share Ms. Perry's updates with us. And that's all I have, Chair.
Thank you. Are there questions for Director Kleiner?
I don't have any questions.
So Director Kleiner, going back to those 3 residential properties, in essence, you were chasing ghosts, is that correct?
So, I mean, I'm gonna say I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that when I look at a property record card, and I look at a property record card, I have assessors around me, right? So I'm speaking with the assessors, and I have the ability to look at multi-years of cards, and I think that's the best practice. Some things, if you're not careful about what year's card you're looking at, sometimes it's a little hard to decipher exactly what the time and chain of events is. That's why we have assessors. That's why they're certified by the state, and that's why we're fortunate to have a very talented staff.
Thank you. Vision is scheduled to come in next month, right? We're having them come in every 3 months. So
Yes.
that would be the end of another quarter. Can they be prepared to answer some concrete questions? As you pointed out, they're about 57% of the way through. So it's November, they started in March. So they're going to have approximately 2/3 of the city done in 8 months, roughly, right?
Right.
Can they be prepared to tell us when they think the remaining 3 wards will be completed? I'm guessing it would probably be sometime in March or early April, but can they be prepared to speak to that?
Yes, I'll make sure they are. I mean, we did speak, we meet, we talk very often, but we have a meeting every other week. And we did discuss, had there been any updates from the state, which there has not, as to what's going to happen with COVID and interior inspections. There has not been any new direction. Both Ms. Perry and I do keep in constant contact on that issue with the DRA. But we did think, now that they've started commercial, and they are out there, and remember they went back and started with Ward 1, because when they initially were going through the wards, they weren't doing commercial properties. We were still working on the commercial data collection manual. So now that they're doing commercials, it may slow down. You may not see them actually done until like June, July, but I'll have June kind of do some projections and bring those forward for you.
Thank you. So are they gaining access to the interiors of the commercial and retail properties?
I asked the same question. I was told some commercial properties, if the property's open and they are able to, but I think that it's limited. And now things are rapidly changing. So, I mean, if you heard the news today, our positive rates have skyrocketed again. We're not quite sure where things are going to go. And we're hoping that the DRA is going to give us some type of forecast and where they see things going for the rest of the year. I mean, there are other communities with revaluations that are asking the same questions we are.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. So will we plan on having them at the first meeting in December?
If it's okay with the board, if I can leave it up to Ms. Perry, we did indicate that she may have a conflict on the 3rd.
Okay.
But if she can, she'll be here the 3rd. If not, the second meeting.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Is there a motion to accept and place on file a communication from a member of the public dated October 14th, 2020?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes, the communication is accepted and placed on file. At this time, I would recognize Mr. Greg Turgis for a report. Mr. Turgis?
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Board. The proration I have in front of you is for a damaged building. In a storm, a tree fell on this building, causing structural damage and was deemed uninhabitable. Worked with the homeowner. She supplied all the proper documentation, which I believe I produced in my report. And they're back in the house. Everything's all done, buttoned up. They're back in the house, and I've calculated out the proration for the amount of time they were unable to use the structure.
Any questions for Mr. Turgis?
I don't have any questions.
So is there a motion to approve the prorate amount of $968.90 for the property located at 35 Nottingham Drive?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Does that conclude your report, Mr. Turgis?
It does. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome, and thank you. At this time, I would recognize Mr. Mandel for a report. Mr. Mandel?
Mike, you're muted.
That's okay. It wasn't important. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Board.
Morning, Mike.
I have a supplemental bill and 2 in-house corrections to present to the board. I also have to note that on the cover letter to the supplemental bill, I have an incorrect address. It should read 21 Saturn Lane. The address that I have on the cover letter is the mailing address for the owners. The supplemental bill is for, as I said, 21 Saturn Lane. It is prorated for a 2020 assessment of $77,100.
Other questions for Mr. Mandel?
No questions.
So is there a motion to approve the supplemental tax bill for the property located at 21 Satin Lane for $1,132.86?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Motion is adopted. Mr. Mandel?
I have an in-house correction for 11 Skyview Drive. It is, shed was removed prior to April 1st and recommending a rebate for $47.48.
Okay, are there any questions for Mr. Mandel?
No questions.
So is there a motion to approve the rebate of taxes for the property located at 11 Skyview Drive for $47.48?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Motion is adopted. Mr. Mandel?
An in-house correction for 11 Oak Grove Trail. Again, it's another shed that was removed prior to the April 1st. I'm recommending a rebate for $27.13.
Are there any questions for Mr. Mandel?
No.
No.
Okay, so when the sheds are removed, do you have to go out and physically inspect that, Mr. Mandel?
Yes, I do.
Is there a motion to approve the rebate of taxes for the property located at 14 Oak Grove Trail in the amount of $27.13?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Motion is adopted. Does that conclude your report, Mr. Mandel?
It does. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okay, unfinished business, none. We've come to the period in the meeting for public comment. A couple of things I would remind everybody: the public comment, the public comment period is limited to 5 minutes per person. And with the first person who's going to speak, state their name and address for the record, please.
Laura Cahoon, 30 Greenwood Drive.
Good morning. Go right ahead.
Good morning. First, I'm still waiting for answers, which I have not gotten. However, I have no faith in Ms. Kleiner because she has no knowledge of the assessing, and that's clearly shown by the emails of some of her replies to me. When I informed her of 12 Ferry, she had the assessors go out. However, if you look at the property, they only closed half the permit and not the full one. So my question is very simple. If the city is not willing to change data that is found by a resident, do you want us to go to the state? Obviously, nobody in the city is willing to listen to any of this, so I just want permission from the Board of Assessors to tell that we can go to the state with this stuff, because obviously it's not being dealt with. Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else who's waiting to speak?
Yes, Lori Ortolano, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. If you could state your address, please.
Sure, 41 Berkeley Street,
Thank you.
Nashua.
Go right
Just
ahead.
quickly, on the yes, did you say something?
No, I said go right ahead.
Okay, so on the abatement applications, Ms. Kleiner made the statement that we ordinarily do not give a date stamped copy back. She's very wrong on that, and I think it might be written down somewhere. But as a matter of procedure, I know I saw many people come into the assessing office and drop off their applications without even asking. The clerical staff makes a copy, date stamps it, makes a copy of the front page and gives it to you. And they tell you it's very important to have that for your records, which I happen to believe it is. We've had a history of tracking these abatements that's been a little problematic. And that is basically their receipt that it has been received and accepted. I put mine in last Friday. I heard nothing back. I specifically asked about time stamping it. I heard nothing. Then I was worried that maybe I submitted it too early, that the tax bill didn't go out on the 15th. I found out today it went out on the 12th. I resent it yesterday saying, I want to make certain someone got this. So, you know, I think she is very wrong on that. We give out that front page, and the clerical staff does it as a matter of business without even being requested to. So property owners have it for their records. And I think it's really important with the assessing office closed that we continue somehow to do that. Email them a copy or email them that it was date stamped this day and this is your receipt. So we know. You know, the other thing is I'm really concerned about how we process applications this year because we lost our, you know, clerical coordinator and our board clerk who had a lot of experience. Miss Cameron came in to take over the job, did it for about 8 months and she left. Louise Brown is now on deck to do that position, the clerk to the board and the supervisory position. And there's been no replacement for Miss Cameron. And that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work for Louise. And, you know, that office is already short-staffed. And that means there's potential for mistakes to be made with these applications. And the board doesn't receive them or review them. So, you know, I'm aware of that. I'm going to be putting in a request to get all of them submitted on a regular basis every 2 weeks. I'm going to work with legal on how to structure that. But I would like to track them, because I know how easy it is for the information to get lost. And I'd like to understand what role Rex Norman will play in this abatement process. I CC'd it to him. I didn't hear anything back. I actually sent my abatement last night to his work address in Wyndham. It is so important for me to know that there is a certified supervisor who's going to look at these things, because for me, that process just hasn't worked. And I don't want the ball dropped on me again. It's just not right. And I'm going to do everything I can to make certain my abatement has eyes on it from certified, qualified people that are supposed to be looking at it based on state regulations. One other quick thing is Rex Norman. Oh, when we pay an appraisal, Attorney Bolton informed me on a Facebook post that that the legal office typically pays appraisers to perform appraisals on properties without going to them. I didn't know that. So the taxpayer pays for these appraisals, not knowing that the appraisal's been done on their property. When they settle on a property, does that appraisal go back into the property owner's file as a public record? How do we see this work we paid for? Or is it still a legal document that is not public and it stays in the legal office? I'm really curious, because I think those appraisals should be part of the record once the settlement is done, and whatever's public is public. The settlement is public. I don't know why the appraisal wouldn't be, because I got a hold of the appraisal for 12 Beeson Street, which was done without ever going to the property. And it piques my interest because the appraisal value that their expert put on it would have given the Corzinis an abatement level that I thought they deserved. It was right in line with what the Corzinis wanted, but the legal office negotiated a significantly higher assessment level, because the Corzinis never knew that this appraisal was done, because nobody had ever come to the house. So the city gets to hold these cards, have this data, and then it's released after. And you can see when, in their case, they were right on their assessment level, but they would never know. And I would have never known if I hadn't put a right to know in to get it. But I think this documentation for paid appraisals by taxpayer dollars should be part of the citizens or the property file for all of us to be able to look at. And also, one last thing, EYB changes. When Ms. Kleiner talks about property record cards with EYB changes, she doesn't say when they were done. We all know there's been an issue with that. A property that was changed from 59 to 79. I don't know when that change was made. When she looks at permits and she says we closed the permits, we all know that many permits have been closed without EYB changes made that should have been done. And that's been an inconsistent factor. And I recognize we're all trying to clean it up, but that's where the error in data occurs. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, comments by members of the board?
No comments.
I don't have any comments.
Just want to go back to what the first citizen said as far as there not being any follow-up and follow-through. Well, that individual raised questions on multiple properties at the prior meeting. They were all researched, and there were no basis. There was no basis to the concerns that were raised. Is there a motion? And let me get the wording of the motion. Is there a motion to go into non-public session to discuss matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of this board, unless such person requests an open meeting? This exemption shall extend to include any application for assistance or tax abatement or waiver of a fee, fine, or other levy, if based on inability to pay or poverty of the applicant pursuant to RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, parenthetical C.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Let the record show that we have entered non-public session at 9:34 a.m. and